Welcome to our podcast, Stepping into Shakespeare, a podcast journey with the Bard. In this podcast, we are talking about the actor's approach to Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet. I am Therese, a Swiss actress based in the UK.
And I'm Lynn, Dawson, a British actress based in LA. The purpose of this podcast is to document our rehearsal process with reading Hamlet.
Today we are talking about our personal approach to Shakespeare and how we as actors were experiencing the reading of Hamlet. I was reading Ophelia.
And I was reading Gertrude and Laertes and a few other characters that got thrown in at the last minute.
And Sarah, how did you get into Shakespeare?
So I always just loved Shakespeare. In England, we have it as part of our school. We have to do certain plays, and I had to do actually the Scottish play. So I know a lot of that play. And I just always loved Shakespeare. I just always found it was so beautiful. The words were beautiful and the writing was really amazing. Mm-hmm. And then in New York, when I lived there, I worked on actually Hamlet and Ophelia.
Yeah.
And then through the years, I just always loved everything about Shakespeare. And I was in a Shakespeare group with a couple of the other actors, Bill and Emmanuel, and we read quite a lot of plays. And then during the pandemic, we obviously started reading plays, and we've done, I think, like 11 now. So
11, wow.
Been fantastic.
Yes.
And what about you? What's your experience?
Well, I'm actually rather new to Shakespeare compared to you, but I came to it, I think, thanks to you when you asked me to join reading Caesar. That was in lockdown, wasn't it? And for me, when I came to England, I was always, I knew Shakespeare is here, but I was so timid and shy about it. I always thought I need to be perfect and understand English really on all levels that I have access to it. And then one friend, she was just, Therese, relax, it's just words. So she kind of helped me to get into it and to build the courage. And then I slowly approached it, and I find it fascinating, really. And I love Caesar, but I also love like Hamlet. I think Hamlet is one of my favorites.
Yeah, and I think it's quite an amazing play like to work on because it's so long and it has such ups and downs and
complicated stories intervening and side stories. I think it's really, really great.
And you shouldn't worry about the language because for me, it's an older English anyway. Yeah. Shakespeare's English is not my English. So I'm kind of translating. So for everybody, it's stepping back into time, isn't it?
And how does it feel for you reading this old language?
It feels a little strange because for them, it was very normal and they say everything in their everyday life. And for me, I don't say adieu or any of this kind of language. But the trick is obviously to make it sound like you say it all the time. And the more you do it, the more you start to think, oh, yeah, this is like... just saying hi, bye.
Exactly. Like for example, they say I have been there, or like this th I think comes up all the time.
That's so true. And the way he writes, it's the same pattern and the same it's very fascinating. And how was your experience of Ophelia? Because she's a very dramatic character.
Absolutely. I mean, I love to play her. And when I was rehearsing it, I could feel like, okay, how she became really from a sad girl, she became a crazy girl, and how she became mad out of sadness. I actually just understood her recently that she lost her dad. And then in her singing, the fascinating thing is when they sing in that play, they always, it's almost like then they say the truth, but she's already so mad that she can't say what really happened. And in one of her songs, she kind of explained that she went to Hamlet in his room and kind of slept with him, but she wanted him to marry him. And then he said, well, I would have married you if you wouldn't have come to my room. Yeah. And that's the biggest betrayal ever. I felt so sorry for that girl. And it's a heartbreaking character, and she is literally she tried to do the best, and she gets betrayal and loss, and apparently
it's very sad.
It's very sad. It's very sad.
It's just so heartbreaking to watch her transition from being this young, happy girl in love, and then just this downfall. It's
downfall and this complete, in a way you could say victim, but she's completely, she gave everything into this hope that she will have Hamlet and that he will love her. And she didn't have command on her own life. She depended on that as well.
Very, very. And I think obviously women at the time were in this position where they were kind of commodities, like who they marry. And, so she was quite dependent on her father and
she lost her honor because of that. So, and then she drowned herself at the end.
Yes.
Which we just hear about. Exactly.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a great experience. I really tried to get this sadness, madness into that song. And often people it's an overwhelming emotion for her. So I often think, this quick change between angry, loud and shy and all this different way, how she tried to express herself. But actually, probably madness is then almost a protection of her, that she doesn't have to feel these horrible feelings.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, definitely. Her brain is just
it's stop.
Her.
It's too horrible. Yeah. So
wow.
That was kind of
yes. It was traumatic.
It was traumatic. Exactly. And how was it for you to play Gertrude?
Well, it was really interesting because I played Ophelia, and then I was like, okay, Gertrude. I wasn't really sure what her character was because I'd not worked on it before. But actually, when I started working on it, there's quite a lot to Gertrude as well, because she has a lot of elements happening with her son, and then everything, the plot line. And so it was a very interesting journey for me to work on her. And she was definitely, she's not a good character. She has she says it herself, she has black spots in her soul. So she does walk the line of which way is she going to go. And so it was interesting for me to look at that, and obviously to work with Frank, him being my son, which is quite was, but you work on a different relationship for that. And then obviously I got to play Laertes, which is really fun. I mean, I really have fun playing some of the male characters because there's no expectation or you can just kind of do what you want.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That was really fun as well.
Yeah. I was always wondering with Gertrude, did she know what was going on?
It's really tricky. Know. No, you don't know. I mean, it's not in the play at all. And I think it's up to interpretation, really. So I suppose as an actor, you have to make a choice. What does she know? But that midpoint, I mean, the scene in the play, Act 3, is it where Hamlet is telling her, that's the point where she kind of comes to the realization of what's going on, and essentially chooses Hamlet's side. But until that point, it's kind of you're not sure really. So it's very good. Yeah.
And were you preparing yourself because she's an older character and you were older than Frank, did you prepare especially, or how was that?
Well, because we're doing audio, it doesn't really matter so much because you can kind of just go on the voice. But I mean, it would be hard to imagine having a 33-year-old son, but at the same time, you just have relationships in your life that you can kind of pull from and put into that. And I think with the audio, it doesn't really matter so much. You just sort of hear the words and go with that. But it's just the fun of acting, isn't it? Just to take on something.
Exactly. And every time we came together as a group, I was so touched by acting really happens in a group. It's a group phenomenon.
Definitely.
You can rehearse at home and you can try to get in the character, but what really happens once you're in a reading, this is just, I kind of like that so much. It makes something with you. Yeah, you can really step into a story.
Yeah, and the more you see somebody really going on a journey with their character, it really helps you bring something to the table. And okay, he just gave me that, so I'm gonna, you can't just go back with and
I find it fascinating that it even works here online on Zoom. We can experience that.
That is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Because we're not even in the same room, because usually you're in a room and then you have these connections with the other people. Yeah,
it's fascinating. And I mean, right now you're in France, so it's so incredible. we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something about the words and it translates really well on Zoom, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's really pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love about Shakespeare as well. Like the plot will happen as long as you can just say the words. It doesn't really matter who's playing the character, the theme comes across.
Absolutely. And when we were reading yesterday, did you have like a moment where you were really touched, or where you thought that's a special moment?
Oh, I really liked when you were doing Ophelia. I was like crying when you were doing that. So I was like, this is really heartbreaking. Seeing somebody, because Gertrude obviously cares about Ophelia, and she's obviously, one of these moms, my son's going to marry this girl.
Exactly.
And
she wanted her to be,
Yeah. So seeing that was really heartbreaking. And I think, a lot of characters, you experience something through the other characters. So Gertrude's maybe cut off from her emotions a little bit, but then she's like experiencing through you this like awful sadness and stuff. I mean, we don't see Gertrude that distressed, So what about you?
Well, for me, especially all the drama when everyone gets killed and drinks the poison. But also, I think I understood the subtle nuances of jokes which the gravedigger do. I mean, they kind of, they tell Hamlet about himself, and I found that fascinating.
Yes, that is so fascinating.
Interesting how, and then I think Hamlet plays sometimes mad, or he uses his madness as an excuse and say, "Oh, it wasn't me, it was my madness." So, and you never really, it's a very subtle line where Hamlet plays there, and I was like, okay, I understand why this play is so famous and so much talked about. Because it has nuances, and I don't know if I get them all, to be honest.
I'm sure you do on an emotional level. It's just that it's Shakespeare's throwing it at you, He's like, okay, there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and you're like, oh my God, there's so much going on. But I know what you mean. The gravedigger scene is like, you would have to have that humor. You cannot do that job and be distressed, You have to have this like gallows humor to be able to get through your job.
And especially in a play where everybody gets killed at the end. I found that so almost symbolic, having a gravedigger telling Hamlet who he is. And
actually, you're right. Yeah, I never really thought about that, but he kind of says that.
And I think Hamlet has one line where he says, "Well, if I don't die now," he doesn't care anymore. Almost like when they ask him for the duel, like for the fighting with Laertes, he's like, "I don't know, when later."
Yeah, and that's quite a definite character choice, isn't it? Because like he's going to be king. I mean, Claudius says like, we're going to give the throne to you, Hamlet. Like, why are you acting like this? So Hamlet has definitely thrown away his future. But he's not thinking about that, is he? He's like,
and he has nothing to lose, and he knows that they want him to be killed, and.
I really like the idea of the fight scene. When I was in New York, I went to like. My teacher, who's amazing, told me like, "Oh, you have to do fencing." So we went. Me and my friend, we went to this fencing class.
To do that.
She was horrified. She was like, "But I loved it." I was like, "Yes, this is so cool."
Exactly.
But just like on stage, I imagine this is quite a tricky scene to choreograph because I mean, I think there's been plays where people have actually been stabbed. I don't know if it's this one, but I know, when they do these fight scenes on stage, it's got a bit.
And is there like a favorite line or something? What do you kind of love out of the play?
So the one I always remember is "To thine own self be true." That's when Polonius is giving advice to Laertes when he's going away. And he's like, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the day the night. Thou canst not then be false to any man."
So if you're too honest with yourself, you're honest with the other people.
Yeah.
That's literally what he say,
Polonius is kind of full of a lot of stuff. So that has always been in my brain. I'd always heard that. And then it wasn't until we did the play, I was like, oh, it's Polonius who's saying that.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know who was going to say it.
So you knew the line before. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, obviously, to be or not to be, and some of the other amazing. What about you?
Well, for me, it was really funny. The first landlady I stayed in England, she was very helpful to me, and I came new to England. I was like, culture and everything. And then she said sometimes, every time I told something isn't in order, she said, "Oh, everything is rotten in the state of Denmark." And I looked at her like, "What? The state of Denmark?" I had no idea. And then I caught it. It is out of Hamlet. And actually, I had to read that line and was so happy. So it was
did.
Yeah, everything is rotten in the state of Denmark.
I remember at the beginning, because you played, which character were you playing at the beginning? Was it?
Not Fortinbras.
No, Marcellus.
Marcellus, exactly. That's his line.
Yeah, that's a
and
great opening.
It's kind of a saying for, everything is wrong, actually, going on. Yeah, so everything is rotten.
Wow, amazing that somebody said that to you. And
before I knew where it came, yeah. And I think the English language is full of these little hints to these lines coming from Shakespeare plays. Yeah.
Most definitely, because when we've been reading the other plays, in Julius Caesar, there's quite a lot as well. You hear somebody read it, and that's where that's come from. And it's like peppered, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
What an amazing writer. I mean, how he just changed like the trajectory of theatre. And for actors, it's so amazing to work on these plays because you just get to just have fun. So in terms of the language, like I think what's really amazing for me is how you just jump in and you just do it. And I think that's the idea behind Shakespeare. Everybody should be able to do Shakespeare.
Absolutely. I mean, it did take me a little bit of courage. And I had these barriers, these language barriers. But the more that I do it, the more I get confident, and the more it's absolutely, as you said, it should be open to everyone. And I think even if you don't understand the word literally, you don't need to make a translation, but you can get a feeling of it.
100%.
And you can even understand the beauty of it. You kind of go, oh, wow. But don't ask me to make a literal translation. But I think that's the nice way to go into a foreign language as well. If you just get the mood and the feeling of it. And it's kind of, you have to trust yourself, or you have to trust your own understanding that you can follow it and be touched by it, even if you don't know literally every single word. It still works, and I kind of find that very fascinating.
It's very fascinating, and the emotion carries you. You know,
exactly.
When you're playing the character and you're feeling the emotion, you say the word and the emotion, it combines, and kind of like the action carries it, doesn't it? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what's so incredible about Shakespeare. And you're right, you don't really, if you get caught on the words, then it's a trap, because you're just going to be
exactly. And then you lose, you lose the flow of your characters.
And what's actually really funny about Hamlet as well is the humor just pops up at bizarre moments and it's quite like, I mean, some of it's like a lot of like sexual innuendo, and like at the play scene where Hamlet's like, "Lady, can I lie in your lap?" And you can just imagine people were laughing like crazy in some of these scenes. Yeah. Because especially at the time when this stuff was kind of more so it's funny sometimes, because I sometimes think of Shakespeare as being this like highbrow and it's like very flowing words and stuff, but he has a lot of just regular life in there that's just very funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes when one of the actors is reading something and I just laugh because I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah, no, true. No, cool. It's great we did that. It's really, really cool.
Definitely.
Sarah, thank you so much for this nice conversation. I love talking to you.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. It's so nice to just talk about like what we experienced and to share it with people. And I loved your idea about the podcast making Shakespeare accessible to people, because I think that's really important. And it's just really, it is available for everybody.
Exactly.
So in our next episode, we're going to be talking to Frank Reeves, who played Hamlet in our reading. And we're going to be talking about his experience of Hamlet.